Hey guys, Loco here for this week's LLL, or Loco Let's Loose. It's basically a talking piece where I try to put in a little bit more effort than the other videos. Not saying I don't put in much effort in the other videos, but for this one, I put in the extra special care. So for you today, I have playoff chances for all the LCS teams. I'm gonna talk about something called strength of schedule. What strength of schedule is, you take the other teams that your team is gonna play and you kind of grade how hard it's going to be for that team. So I'm doing a very simple version of it where I take the win-loss records of the teams, I combine it, and I give you a percentage. The lower the percentage is, the easier the strength of schedule is. The higher the percentage, the harder the team is going to have. For simplicity's sake, I'm going to have Cloud9 and FlyQuest making it into playoffs. Cloud9 is guaranteed anyway. For FlyQuest, I think they're only a few wins from being guaranteed. And I'm also going to have CLG not making playoffs. We're going to talk about rest of the league, the 7 teams that are still in the running, and which 4 will make it along with C9 and FlyQuest. And there's something called a magic number. So the magic number is exactly how many wins the teams need to be able to clinch playoffs. Normally, the magic number is 8 or 9, so keep that in mind when we are talking about these teams. Without further ado, let's get started. The first team we have is Immortals. So Immortals has a pretty relatively easy strength of schedule, and they're also 6-6. They only need to win either 2 or 3 games to clinch playoff. So they should make it in pretty easily, right? Here's the problem. A lot of their wins they picked up earlier in the season, and they did it by not playing that well throughout the game, but making just few good decisions later on and honestly having the other team really fumble. Teams are getting better and they're gearing up for playoffs, so I don't think it's going to be easy for Immortals to find the win. They did have a recent switch up with Apollo coming in for Altec, but I don't think that's going to be enough. And when I look at this team, I just don't see how they win the game other than outscaling and having the other team be shit later on, and those aren't real ways to win the game as people get better and people are just getting better. My final record for them is going to be 6-12, and yeah, I don't see them winning games over any of the teams that they have left. Maybe over 100 Thieves, maybe over EG or Dignitas if they really fuck up, or maybe over TSM if TSM just blows up, but those are so iffy other than the 100 Thieves win. So yeah, even if they do better, they're somewhere around 7-11, and that's just not going to be enough. Next up, we have TSM. Broken Blade has actually proven to be a real star, and he's one of the best top laner in the league right now. But unfortunately for TSM, their normal star player in Bjergsen has been pretty middling. And yeah, their bad teamfight selection and questionable drafts make it really hard for me to believe in this team. It just seems like they aren't clicking. And also for Dardoch, he's not really popping off. And I actually think TSM's rigid early game has really stifled what makes Dardoch good. He's really known for great gank selection and creative early game, but recently Dardoch just has not been that player. So yeah, the upsides for this team are really great, but they've been pretty stagnant, and all the problems that they are having make it pretty hard for me to believe in them. But here's the thing, they have a pretty easy strength of schedule, so long as they're beating teams like Immortals, Golden Guardians, and 100 Thieves, thanks to their 6-6 record, they should be able to make playoffs. For the last of the 6-6 team, we have Team Liquid. This one is actually really weird because even though they are 6-6, they recently replaced Doublelift with Tactical, and the team overall has been finally clicking. And I don't think 6-6 accurately represents how strong this team is. They started the season with Surnfire, they lost 4 games on Senna, and when Broxah finally came in, the team wasn't clicking. But all those problems are gone. The team is clicking, Broxah looks more like Fnatic Broxah, and Senna not being played isn't that big of a problem anymore as it was earlier on in the season. I know they're still fasting Senna, and I know they had to ban Senna twice in the last week, but I'm sure they'll learn to pick it up. So yeah, I actually think TL is much better than their record, and even though their strength of schedule looks to be much harder than most teams, I think they'll beat most of the teams that they have lined up. They'll beat CLG, they'll beat Immortals, they'll beat EG, I'm sure they'll beat Golden Guardians. The last 2 include FlyQuest and C9, but I do think the FlyQuest game is definitely winnable for Team Liquid, especially if they have more weeks to gel. As for C9, unless they're 17-0 and pushing for that undefeated record when they're playing for TL, I do think they might not play at their full strength. So there's a lot of things we have to factor in when judging this Team Liquid roster, but one thing that's for sure for me is they are playoff bound, and I'd be shocked if this roster didn't make playoffs. Now we're going to get to the 5-7 teams. These teams have to either win 3 or 4 games to make playoffs, so yeah, it's going to be much harder for them than the 3 other teams we talked about earlier. The first team we have is EG. This team is so hard to talk about because they're so freaking inconsistent. They're 2 good players in Zizuke and Sven, are the ones really carrying them through the early game. They're the only ones that really have agency. And Bang, while he's been doing better and better, only really comes online in mid-game and team fights. The thing about Svenskeren and Zizuke is they're also very inconsistent in terms of how good they are. I think Sven can't really show who he is as a player, as a jungle, when his side lanes are always getting pushed in. For Zizuke, this guy's always having a random ass death almost every single game where I just look at it and I'm like, why are you even dying like that? So yeah, it's a really hard team to have faith in, but I still have them making playoffs. Their strength of schedule is relatively easy. All they have to do is beat CLG and Immortals, and then their game versus Dignitas is just a really, really crucial one. If they win that game, I am 90% sure they make playoffs. They will probably lose to the teams that are much higher than them in the standings, C9, Team Liquid, and FlyQuest. But yeah, make sure you show up for the 3 games that are really important and really, really show up for the Dignitas game, and you'll do fine, EG. Now, let's talk about Dignitas. Things have been getting weird for this team. I think the identity and the kind of picks they're doing is going away from what made them strong. The Ignite Lucian game, the Pantheon into Set game from Huni, my god. I understand Huni is a carry player through and through, and he doesn't like being the supportive or the side character, but the strong parts about this team for me is Froggen and Johnson, especially in team fights and later on in the game. And when Huni's playing these hard carries that require resource, the shift in the direction of the team goes away from what I personally believe makes them strong. So I would really like it if the coaching staff, Froggen and Afro, the veterans on the team, spoke up and really righted the ship from wherever the hell it's going. Grig is also a sore spot for this team, but if your identity is around team fighting later on, I do think a lot of Grig's weakness can get covered up, and they do have a relatively easy strength of schedule. They're playing teams that average a 40.3 win percentage, and all they have to do is beat 100 Thieves, GG, CLG, Immortals. Pretty easy 4 wins, right? And then they just have to beat TSM, and if they beat EG along the way, they are through. They are in playoffs. So yeah, Dig, you guys have it easy. Just get the job done, and we'll see you in playoffs. Now we have Golden Guardians. Ooh, I just don't know what's happening with this team. There's been individual problems that the players are having that are bleeding into the good team play that they were able to show earlier in the season. I think Keith's inexperience as a support is really killing this team. He's getting caught out and dying in such random spots, and when your support is dead, you're not able to place your own wars or clear out the wars. And when they lack vision, there's a lot of stupid stuff happening, like Haunter dying in a side lane, Closer checking into things he shouldn't, FBI walking into places where he knows opponents are. Things just get so fucking weird for this team. And also, Closer, who's been a really bright spot for this team and a pleasant surprise, isn't the greatest when it comes to mid-game, and he's often getting lost. I think GG has a lot of players that can be good in the future, but right now the experience just isn't there, and I don't see them making it out. Also, they have a really hard strength of schedule. They end up playing Dignitas, C9, TL, TSM, CLG, and FlyQuest, and the only team I can really mark down as a win for Golden Guardians out of those 6 is CLG. So yeah, Golden Guardians, I don't think we're going to be seeing you in postseason. And lastly, we have 100 Thieves. Papa, you're a great broadcaster and just a great talker in general. And whenever you talk and tell me things, I tend to believe it. But for this 100 Thieves team, I don't think I'm going to believe. I think Ryoma had one good performance recently, and that was in the Evil Genius game. But other than that, I think this guy has been a pretty clear bottom 3 mid lane. And even in 100 Thieves wins, I'm not very convinced. It usually consists of 90% bad gameplay, and then 10% good gameplay at the end, and they're able to win. And also, Meteos, usually a really dependable and a stable piece for the team, has not been that. He's last or second last in gold differential at 10, XP differential at 10, and CS differential at 10. He just isn't the Meteos that I know from before, who always had really great pathing, who never really missed out on ganks. And yeah, maybe it's the teammates, maybe it's Meteos' underperformance individually, but it isn't the same. And lastly, the lone bright spot for this team is Someday, and top lane hasn't been the most carry-oriented role for this meta. There's Ornn, Set, Soraka, these 3 have been the most dominant picks. The pick that 100 Thieves have had success with is Aatrox, and yeah, that's just not a giga carry. Sure, you can win lane, sure you can flank, but it's really hard to win the entire game by yourself on Aatrox unless you're just steaming the other team. So for 100 Thieves, I just don't have you making playoffs. I'm sorry, Papa, what can I say? I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Leave a comment down below letting me know which 6 teams you have making playoffs, and if you have a list that's different than mine and you make a lot of sense, I will definitely reply back to you. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the video. And one last thing, I'm not crazy, I'm just Loco. Bye!